everyone. We're grateful to have you here. We have for the first time a live stream going on of this event, as well as those that are here in the room. So obviously the desire is to have as many people congregating in person. We can interact and engage with each other that way, but wanted to be able to spread the word and hopefully encourage people to come. We'll be doing a similar event and activity for the ACT conference in 2025 in San Antonio in April. So put that on the radar if you aren't aware of that yet. But welcome. We're grateful to have you here to the trainee event, that training supervisor event that we have going on. We had a fun outing last night and had some sponsors for that. We just wanted to acknowledge and recognize LIA is a professional E&O insurance provider, provided some funds to help cover that. Solomon Adjustment Calculator was the sponsor of that event. And
Appraiser was Hugo Appraiser also did that. So he was helpful and donated as well. And he has a company of his own. So all of our sponsors, we are very thankful for you.
Perfect. Yeah, absolutely. Ben with Appraiser eLearning, a big thank you to you for helping make this stream happen for the first time. We'll see how that response plays out. But we're excited to be able to not only make it available live, but also we can't be here on site, but have a recording so that we've got very good speakers, good information lined up that will be going out, and so we want to be able to have that reach as far as it can. So, with that, anything else you have before we move Craig up here? Yeah. All right.
We have Craig, and he's going to come talk to us about rules when you have more than one appraiser in the office, whether it's a trainee or just another partner. These are the kind of things that you need to know and follow during that process that a lot of people have questions on. So, welcome, Craig.
All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming. For those of you that have possibly seen me speak before, you know I like to keep this as conversational as possible. So please, if you have questions or thoughts throughout, I want to hear them. This is not a slide-intensive presentation. It's not going to be followed a bouncing ball, because I don't think people get the most out of that. So I want to keep this conversational. So if there is anything that we're touching on that you want to add to, that you want to discuss further, if you've got some thoughts or questions of your own, let's hear them, and we'll keep this engaging and interactive for everyone. As mentioned, my name is Craig Capilla. I'm an attorney, and I'm based out of the Chicago suburbs. I spend a lot of my practice dealing with appraisal, valuation, lender concerning legal needs. I'm a former regulatory prosecutor. I spent 4.5 years as the licensing prosecutor for the state of Illinois, handling all of the appraiser licensing, real estate brokers, home inspectors, which is a licensed profession in Illinois. Not every state licenses them, but Illinois does. We had a handful of other professions as well. In fact, as an agency overall, there's north of 45 licensed professions in Illinois. We like to joke about it. Everything from barbers to birthday clowns comes with a license in the state of Illinois. So we've certainly had enough to keep us busy there for a while. But what we're going to talk about today is specifically best practices in an office environment to try to help limit your risk and exposure, try to really turn the temperature down on those liabilities. And again, the things that we need to keep in mind throughout all of this is we always have one ultimate goal that we're driving at in any appraisal assignment, but even as a broader feature in just in our general business practices as professionals. What are we doing here? What's the point of all of this? And you know, at the core of appraising, under the central tenet of everything in USPAP that you've got to be thinking about is you're seeking credibility. You are seeking worthy of belief. That should be the credo that's basically strapped over the door of your office. Because every day when you walk in and every day when you walk out, that's the goal that you're driving at. Now, what is credible? This is straight out of USPAP right here. Credible, worthy of belief. Comment, credible assignment results require support by relevant evidence and logic to the degree necessary for the intended use. Okay, that's the appraisal specific definition of credibility. But for all of you as professionals, I would suggest you read that a little bit more broadly, where you get my comment that you're not going to find it. which is, so why should I believe you? Keep that as your core question that you're always trying to answer when you're working through this. Supervisors, this is your obligation to impart that on your trainees, so that your trainees understand that the core tenet of all of this is seeking credibility and driving towards that. When you're wondering, how do I help train my trainee? How do I interact with them? What are we driving towards? Keep coming back to the central question. Why is this worthy of belief? Is this worthy of belief? If it isn't, then we've got more work to do, and we've got to keep doing that. That's the central focus of appraisal, but I will tell you, it's also the central focus of professional relationships and trust. Okay, so it's not unique to this appraisal assignment. It's not unique to that one bank job I got or that private client bid. No, it's not. It's everything that we do when we're working with each other and interacting. So one of the things, I'm going to leave that up on screen a little bit while we talk about some of the other features of that, because we're going to keep going back to that point. It is the whole point of why we're doing this. Now, we're going to talk about some report writing tips today. We're going to focus on some of that. We're going to talk about the work file. We always have to talk about the work file. But I don't want this to be just a very dry, boring, use path adjacent appraisal class. That's not what this is. This is everything about running a professional appraisal practice from A to Z. It's not just on an assignment basis. So when we think about these things, even in the context of a particular appraisal or a particular assignment, I want to keep the focus on it that this is actually the core tenet of the entire relationship. We will keep coming back to that. So here's the deal. I spend a lot of my time traveling around, talking to appraisers who find themselves in difficult situations. They've been hit with a licensing complaint from their state board. They've been hit with a lawsuit of some kind. It's even more fraught with risk when you're dealing with a supervisor-trainee relationship, because by the very nature of that relationship, you know, trainees are still learning this out as they go, and they don't have all of the answers. As a supervisor, you've now taken on that responsibility to your trainee to help them hopefully avoid those situations, but also to help navigate those situations when you have to. And got to tell you this one, particularly when you're still both signing the reports. You're sitting in that seat right next to them, okay? So these are also the sorts of things that you need to be paying attention to. So I do want to move forward here onto this next bit, which is, I pulled this out of the 1004. I know it's not all bank work, it's not all GSE work, we're not always married to this form, but a lot of the assignments, and frankly, a lot of the assignments that I see that are subject to a complaint or a lawsuit are Fannie or Freddie assignments, GSE reports, okay? So what are we agreeing to when we take on this assignment? Now, this is the certification page of the 1004 form. How many of you sits down when you're filling out one of these forms and reads this certification page each time before you slap your signature on it? Because this is what you are signing. I have, at a minimum, developed and reported this appraisal in accordance with the scope of work requirements stated in this appraisal report. Okay, good. We can all get behind that. That's not too hard. I performed a complete visual inspection of the interior and exterior areas of the subject property. All right, let's pause and focus on this one a little. Let's go ahead and inspect it. That does not eliminate this statement. This is pre-populated language in the form that doesn't come out of there. You can't paper over that just by making a note in another place. Then, at best, it's contradictory and you've lost credibility.
Just said something about you can't paste over it by putting words in another place.
Right.
You mean I can't say in my addendum that I sent my trainee out to do the inspection, and that makes it okay?
Absolutely cannot do that. And in fact, before you get to the certification, before you get to those numbered points, if you look at the form closely, there's another statement that leads into all of this that says you will not modify or delete these certifications in there. Which gets you all the way back around to the idea of, for example, the state of California will charge it as a licensing fraud case. I've had those phone calls with the folks out of Forget. It takes about 3 steps to get you to be able to make that leap, because you knowingly made a false statement when you signed off on this. Joanne.
So how does this match with the ASB saying that an appraiser not a form complies with use path, and appraisers must supplement a form when necessary?
Absolutely. That's a correct statement. That does not directly apply to the pre-populated language that can't be modified. You're right, there is not a single use path compliant form in existence. The appraiser complies with use path. The form does not. But where you have language in a form that says that I have this language already baked into the form and I will not modify or delete it, you can't. If you have to change the language that's there, you have to get off that form. There's other forms you could use, or God forbid, write a narrative. Now, let's be very clear. Joanne and I have spent hours going around and around about these things because we nerd out on this stuff and talk about these things. For her and I, our ideal world, everything would probably be a narrative. We'd abandon these stupid forms. That's not happening. The clients don't want that anyway. There is a bit of the tail wagging the dog here. That's not going anywhere. But if we're going to take on the assignment, we have to meet the conditions of the assignment we've taken on, or we can't take on the assignment. I'm going to get a new in my office on the wall. That's going to have a phrase on it. And this is the phrase that's going to put my children through college. I wish I wouldn't have taken that assignment. And it's going to be a huge little needle point right there. That's okay. Because that is going to put my kids to some great schools. That is the most commonly uttered statement in my office when I'm talking to an appraiser who's now facing a trouble spot.
Have you seen when in the new data set that how this is going to change, or is it being modified, or because I've not seen that portion in the new data set?
So you're basically the new reporting format, really, that's not even a report per se, but it's more of like an upload portal that's just going to create something resembling a report at the end.
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that. Yeah, so these certs, this information as you see it is largely going to appear as it traditionally has, even on the 2005 form that we're using now. They basically slid all of that info over. Good Lord, Peter and I spent so much time wrangling with them to try to get them to remove certification 23. And I'm proud to report to you that we absolutely lost that one. Sorry, you're stuck with it. We tried. We really tried hard on that one. They weren't budging. But so with that, the cert language that you see already is also going to be the certification language in that new format going forward. And you're going to have to continue to abide by it. And again, it's not for their purposes, this is a condition of their assignment when you're doing one of these lender assignments on a GSE form. Anytime you get a chance to get off of these forms, you should do that. While we're having Frank's most common liability concerns, folks, I still get estate work and divorce work on the 1004 form, where it says specifically that the intended use is for a mortgage finance transaction. A really great way in a divorce case to get pantsed by opposing counsel is when they put that in front of you and start asking you to explain what mortgage you're talking about. That's an uncomfortable series of questions on cross-examination that don't go well. So if you're out there doing litigation work, get off these GSE forms. Again, I'm kind of preaching to the choir here. The fact that you people are in the room right now indicates to me that you're not the people I have to worry about who are out there in the wild doing this crap. But they walk among us, and it still happens. So that's another one of those things to keep in mind. Yeah, is your credibility shot? Because we were talking just now about can you add language and can you modify that? I sent my trainee out to inspect this. When you're signing on the left side saying you performed a visual inspection is no different than saying the intended use of this is for a mortgage finance transaction. But actually on page 9, it's actually really for this litigation assignment that I'm doing. Same problem there. You cannot reinvent the wheel on this. You can't strip that language out of there. If you have a question, I kind of skipped over you there.
No, it's perfect. So is there a scenario in which an appraiser, and I've seen a lot of these too, appraisers signed the left certification, I did these things, they didn't actually go inspect or whatever it is. Is there a scenario where an appraiser can have a trainee inspect and appropriately comply with the certifications in the report?
Absolutely. And frankly, when those opportunities present themselves, I encourage that. I'm a firm believer in the see one, do one, teach one kind of a method. So as a best practice in the office, when you are having and you're developing that supervisor trainee relationship, supervisors, I would encourage you to have the trainee shadow you and then invert that process and have you shadow the trainee and let the trainee do assignments, soup to nuts. Here's the order sheet. What can we do from here? And let them run through it. It's not helicopter parenting. Okay, we need to make sure that we're actually conveying this message. And this is something I found out about myself the hard way. When I thought once upon a time as a young attorney that I was pretty good at presenting the material to get the outcome that I wanted, and I wasn't getting that outcome, couldn't make the leap. I don't get this. What more did I need to do? Then I had to have somebody else show me, well, you did this, you did this, you did this, you did this. See where the holes of it. Now I do. I didn't see it in real time, but I had to go through that process. And I had to then have it shown to me. You might learn as supervisors that your own teaching process has some holes in it. And you know when you're going to find that out? When your trainee picks up an assignment from the order form and goes, I'm going to do step A, step B, step F. And you're like, wow, what are you on F? And you're like, well, this is what you do. You're like, oh, crap, I kind of jumped to F, don't I? You learn a little bit about yourself in the process, and it's valuable learning. So I'm not up here to be Tony Robbins or anything, but I got to tell you, when you take on the responsibility of bringing up another generation into the profession, teaching people and training them up, you need to do it with some humility and some vulnerability too. Because you're going to find out a good bit about yourself in the process while you're at it. You're going to find out where the holes are in your processes. And you're both going to end up being better professionals because of that. It's the same idea of, even now, if you're working in a vacuum, if you are working as an appraiser, basically solo, you need to get another set of eyes on your work. Because the most common thing I run into with appraisers who find themselves sitting in my office are most frequently the appraisers absolutely know this is what I did, this is why I did it, and this is where it led me. Now, what is that? Sounds a whole lot like the scope of work in the reporting process, isn't it? That's actually the message that you're conveying to your clients when you're doing this. This is what I did. This is why I did it. And this is where it led me. That's appraising. That's reporting. But it often gets trapped in here and it doesn't come out through the fingers. It doesn't often make it onto the page. When the license complaint comes in, when the lawsuit pops up, when the revision requests start coming back, it's because the reader can't tell
What did you do? Why did you do it? And where did it lead you? It's very often trapped up in here. When you are teaching a trainee how to do this, it's going to force you to revisit some of that too about your own processes. And you're going to realize that even more so than you had been, you're going to need to be writing this for your reader. And in that context, for some of this, your reader is going to be your trainee who has to try to figure out, why are you doing what you're doing and where is it taking us? So these are all the sorts of things throughout this process that, again, I'm not up here to rah motivational speaker you on this stuff. But I will tell you, it's bigger than just the language in a form report. It's sort of, folks, it's being a professional. It's a completely holistic approach to running a professional service. It's not just one appraisal assignment. It's not one job. It really runs throughout, and that's why I led off so strong on the credibility thing. Yeah, USPAP tells us that credibility is the root of all of this. But it ain't just USPAP, and it ain't just the one assignment. From the moment you turn the lights on in the office in the morning, credibility is the thing that we are driving for all day until we shut the shades at night and go home. That's the point of all of this. So this is the left side signer cert. All right, we talked about this point. We actually kind of talked this part to death. Now, how about this goes to Jeff's question? What about that scenario where you've got your trainee that's able to be out in the field and do the inspection, and that whole see one, do one, teach one idea? Remember this, supervisors, when you're signing on the right, this is what you're signing to at that point. I directly supervise the appraiser for this appraisal assignment, have read the report and agree with the appraiser's analysis, opinion, statements, conclusion. Okay? You bought it. By signing on the right, you bought it. You buy your ticket, you take your ride. If there's a question for your trainee about all of this, you are in the chair right next to him answering those questions. So let's talk about that part for a little bit. I have this happen way too frequently. It is a wildly uncomfortable moment when an appraisal report gets turned into a state board and the supervisor and the trainee get called in together. Or send us a copy of the report, send us your work file. We're going to talk about work file here in a little bit. Why did you come up with that? What was your methodology here? Why did you take this approach? What led you to that conclusion? And the trainee is sitting there, eyes wide, going, I didn't come up with that. More often than I care to admit, the supervisor found something in the report before it went to the client that they didn't think the trainee had handled correctly. So they just made the change and sent that right off.
Isn't that fraudulent? Sorry, I had to.
Joanne, you came with one question.
Well, yeah.
And the answer to your question is, yeah, you don't have to squint too hard to see that being a problem. You've now changed the contents of that report without the acknowledgement, the approval of one of the signers to the report.
What if the trainee didn't keep their own copy and can't support that?
I said we're going to come to the work file in a little bit. But yes, we're fast forwarding ahead of me, but you're not wrong. Okay, we're going to do that part because it's important. Work file is another area where there is real liability risk here in a supervisor trainee relationship, or frankly, just in a firm with multiple people. Well,
The supervisor obtained permission from the trainee for affixing their signature to the new report.
and that's a real concern, and often the answer to that. So that becomes a real serious problem now in a room, sitting in front of the state board members. And now they're thinking to themselves, what do we really have going on over at that appraisal office? That the reports are leaving there with the signature of an appraiser on it, but the appraiser apparently did not perform all of that work, did not agree with all of the conclusions. So obviously, I strongly caution you, don't do that, okay? But this is an area, if you are taking on a trainee and you don't think the trainee got a particular aspect of an assignment correct, your responsibility is to sit down and go through that with the trainee and help them understand why, wherever this led them, the conclusion that they reached wasn't the correct conclusion. And you might surprise yourself. Sometimes they just might be right.
How important is it to have the trainee do the revisions?
I think it's hugely important to have the trainee do the revisions for a couple of different reasons. One, I think it's good repetition, and everybody improves through repetition. So I think having the trainee go ahead and make the revisions and then get that report completed again and transmitted is helpful just from the standpoint of the repetitions, but that's also the buy-in too. Now they are doing this with full knowledge and understanding of this is what's being addressed, this is what's being changed or not changed, this is why. And it's developing that whole process. So I'm pretty staunch adherence to the idea of let's also, if we're doing this and the trainee, because we already talked about this before, particularly if you got him as a signer, that I have at a minimum developed and reported this, I performed this appraisal in accordance with requirements of USPAP. I developed my opinion of the market value. So look, folks, this is another one. If the trainee goes out and does the inspection and then hands that to you and you write the rest of the report, folks, you got a problem. Because you can't sign the left side and neither can they. You go down 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, if I recall correctly, all the way through, are all of the aspects of the assignment that the left side signer will have completed. There is no GSE form that currently allows for an individual appraiser to merely go out and perform the inspection and no other facet of the assignment and sign on the left.
Don't they have the hybrid forms?
There's a hybrid form, but that doesn't contemplate the appraiser signing on the left of the appraisal, having only gone out and done the inspection. In that context, in the hybrid format, the inspector, be it another appraiser or not, it's not actually a signer at all. It's a glorified desktop that the left side signer still will have completed the appraisal assignment throughout. So that doesn't get you all the way there. So I've had that problem come up before too. Yes, I did send the trainee out to do that. What they do, they inspect. What else do they do? Well, they inspect it. Well, that's not getting it done for me. They can't sign the left and you can't either because you didn't inspect. Joanne, it's time for your question.
Isn't that fraud?
Yes, it is. That's how that works.
Twice. So, yeah.
So that's the idea with that, is that's something to be cognizant of. When you sign on the right side, you are taking responsibility now for everything that that left side signer did. But you have to work through it together. You cannot lone wolf this stuff. That's not an option that's available to you. And to the questions about revisions and all that, yes, I think it's critically important that supervisor and trainee, or right side, left side signer, let's say you're both certified appraisers, that doesn't preclude you from still doing this way. Now, I'm not entirely certain why you want another right side signer if you're both certified, but it's not impossible.
Approved list.
As you said, there could be reasons that could be client specific. That's the approach that you take. Well, even then, the language remains the same, the obligations remain the same, and this is a full-blown team approach that old signers
have to have worked up the assignment fully from A to Z. All right, we'll get to the work file bit here a little bit, because we always have to talk about the work file part. I've never given a presentation where the work file question doesn't come up. So now I just throw work file slides in anyway, because I know they're gonna come up at some point. All right, so what is the work file? This is another component of working in an office environment with multiple appraisers. I don't really care if it's supervisor, trainee, or if it's just a multi-appraiser office environment. The work file is another area that's fraught with risk, because we get lazy, we get complacent. Oh, I'm sure you put that in the work file, right? So I'm not gonna worry about making sure that that gets in there, because you got that part, right? It's good. We don't cross all our T's, we don't dot our I's, and it can come back and bite us later. But okay, what is the work file? Now, I'm sad that they finally actually managed to get another use map out in 2024. So I used to leave this language as the 2020-20 dot. And so let's see how many years it's gonna take them to solve this problem, but they got me.
Hold on. You know why?
I know exactly why. I used to love leaving that slide in there just for you all. It was a riot. Blast with this stuff. Now you'll notice this is from the 2024 use map. The language has changed some in relation to the work file. There have been edits. So your definition now is data, information, and documentation necessary to support the appraiser's opinions and conclusions. And it used to follow that line with, and to comply with use pact. It's a little bit circular. So that line got pulled out of there, but never fear. When you go to the actual rule or the work file, the record keeping rule, they left that line in there on that one. So it's still there. It's not entirely removed. But this is the material that we're talking about. What is the work file? Name of the client and the identity by name or title of any other attended users. Okay, again, we're not going to do the full use map thing for you here. You've taken enough of it. You keep taking it. You'll hear more of it later this week too, in various other sessions. But understand, we've got a really good framework for what is a work file, what needs to be in that work file. Okay, so where does that lead us now? Whose responsibility is the work file?
Everybody.
Everybody's. Anybody who's working on that assignment.
So my trainee needs to keep their own work file in addition to me keeping my work file as the supervisor.
Thank you for that question. And no, they do not need to keep their own work file. But you as the supervisor have a responsibility, have an obligation to allow your trainee access to that work file.
For how long?
Forever and ever, amen. If that trainee moves on from you and still catches a question about that assignment at some point, I don't care how grumpy you are about the manner in which that trainee left your office. You have an obligation to share that work file with them. They don't need to take it when they go. You can hold that record, but you can't prevent them from accessing that record.
For what reasons?
There's a couple of different reasons. One, what if they are actually going ahead and working on the license upgrade? And as a part of working on their certification, they have to submit reports and or work files to the state for review for that upgrade. You can't stand in the way of progress. You don't get to withhold that from them. What if it gets turned in as a board complaint and they get a notice in the mail that they have to now go sit with the state board to answer for that? And the state says, you must give me a copy of your report and your work file. And your former trainee says, I'm sorry, I can't give that to you. Why not? Well, the person I've been working for at the time, they won't let me get my file. Well, guess what? You're going to state too.
Does the trainee have recourse? Or the supervisor denies that work file?
Yes, so the question was, is there recourse if the supervisor denies the trainee access to that file? Yeah, there's a couple of different ways that can go. First of all, you are again pretty much booking yourself a one-way ticket to your state board. Additionally, particularly if it is the subject of litigation or something like that, Joanne mentioned it, she threw the word out there a moment ago, a subpoena might be in question on all of this stuff.
Colorado, when supervisors were getting them to the state for investigations on trainees, the state board actually issued subpoenas to the supervisor.
Good. One, because it's just a jobs program for lawyers like me. There's also reasons for that, though. That is, it's a heavy-handed approach. It's unfortunate that it became a necessary approach, but good. That's how this is supposed to work. You're supposed to continue, and this is the hard part with the supervisor trainee relation to begin with. I have heard this all over the country at all different times. From the grumblers that don't want to train anyone and have a trainee anyway. Why do I want to train my competition? Why am I going to train my replacement? Okay. I cannot tell you how many times I've heard that question. And this is the same sort of thinking that also goes into the, well, fine, you can leave, but I'm locking everything down. So forget you ever met me. You're off on your own now. Good luck. We'll see how that goes. Hey, knock, knock. I need to get that work file. I need to submit that. Well, I'm not going to give it to you. Well, yeah, you are. I mean, at the end of the day, that's really what that boils down to. Yes, you are, Jeff.
Would it not be a best practice with technology, digital filing to maintain two work file? Let the trainee have their own version of the work file, or is it?
There's not a one size fits all answer to that. Philosophically, I'm not opposed to it. I mean, look, we've done the work file, we've done the storage thing before. Like, does anyone know what this thing is? It's the sum total of all human knowledge. Okay, and I now have it in my pocket. We put people on the moon with the computing power of a Casio wristwatch, and now we are all walking around on a daily basis the sum total of all human knowledge. Okay, so yes, in the digital age, there's absolutely no reason why we cannot use technology as a solution for that. Now, if you have a particular security concern, a legitimate one, if you happen to work on highly sensitive material and for better or for worse, you don't know when that trainee moves on, either to go open and hang their own shingle or to move over to another firm. You just don't know for sure if you've got a potential data security risk. I could see that as a reason why you may not want to just leave that open access and you go right ahead. But there's a couple of jumping off points for that too. Maybe it's a matter of, hey, these are the assignments that you worked on while you were here. I'm going to carve those off for you and you can take those ones with you, but you don't have access to the rest of it. So there's a number of different ways to approach that, and I think it's going to be to each office to really figure out what your data and record keeping approach is from just a data security and a risk tolerance perspective. But it's a solvable problem, right? What you have to do, whatever your answer is you at least need to be thoughtful about it and figure out what your policy is that works for you, and then have a policy and stick to it. You know, the question came up was, you know, how long do they have to be given access to that work file? Which of course my glib answer was forever and ever, amen. That's the chicken and the egg work file problem, right? How long do I have to keep a work file?
5 and 2.
Right? Clean. Easy. Everyone does that. Everyone knows that, right?
No.
No, not a lick. Now, here's the problem.
That's
Exactly.
All right.
I'm a firm believer that work file management, and this is just a document retention policy question, your use path minimums are 5 years, or when the matter is the subject of litigation 2 years after the conclusion of the litigation. Now, I've been trying for 15 years now to get somebody to actually tell me what is 2 years after the conclusion of litigation. Is it after the trial court decision? Or when it goes up on an appeal and then gets sent back to the trial court? to reconsider things, and they still don't like it, so it's back to the appellate court, and then it actually goes to the state Supreme Court, and then the state Supreme Court remanded it back to trial court for further, where's the 2 years running on that? Nobody has ever actually managed to answer that question. I also think trying to find the bare minimum and just go to the bare minimum is short-sighted. Use path is the minimum standard. Let's all get used to reminding ourselves and our trainees, use path is a minimum standard. Nobody goes to appraiser jail for exceeding the minimum. Okay, you're always allowed to be better than the minimum standard. It's totally okay. In fact, it's even encouraged. 5 years or 2 years is the minimum record keeping standard. State of Illinois, that's great, because 5 years is the length of time that the state board can bring a license complaint. 5 years is the length of time somebody can file a negligence lawsuit. 10 years is the length of time somebody can bring a breach of contract case. So if you go ahead and every Monday you go out by the oil drum in the driveway and dump all your boxes of papers to dance around it, everything that was 5 years and a week old, and 8 years down, you get a complaint, you might not have the tools that you need to defend yourself. And the part of the work file here that I didn't put in this slide deck is there's a really tongue-in-cheek slide that I usually put in here that says, you know, this is what the youth work file is defined as, this is what USPAP tells us in the record keeping rule, and then there's correct rule, which makes me look better at my job than I really am. Your work file makes me look really smart when I'm standing in front of a judge. It ain't me. It's whatever you've got that I have to work with. That is your best tool of defense, because the work file done properly is the full record of support for what you did, why you did it, and where it led you. Your report. The best tool you have is a strong, robust work file. And it's important from day one, when you're doing that multi-appraiser environment, to make sure that you have a policy about work file build out and record retention, and that everyone understands what the policy is, and everybody plays ball and gets along with that policy and sticks to that policy. And every appraiser that's on an assignment, supervisor, trainee, 2 certified appraisers on the same assignment, don't really care. You're all responsible for the build out and maintenance of that work file. You cannot get around that feature. It will help you in the long run to set this up in such a way that you are doing the proper work on that. All right, off the work file. Oh, question, yes, please.
What happens if your supervisor dies, retires, and moves to another country, or closes?
Would you believe I've seen all of those? It does happen. We have had a number of occasions where, in the process of building out an experience log for licensure upgrade, a trainee has had their supervisor pass away. Now, if you've been maintaining a log all the way through and you've got a record of all of that and you've done that in real time, you're okay. That's just record keeping and maintenance of like how many assignments, what addresses, all of that stuff. The work files for each unique assignment become a little bit of a tricky problem too, because what if you no longer have access? What if, for better or for worse, next of kin who had no appraisal knowledge came in and basically disposed of the office environment because, well, I'm not an appraiser and I'm not taking this over. This office is just closed now, so we don't need any of this crap, right? Yeah, unfortunately, that can happen. Now, when you're still actively working together as supervisor and trainee, I'd like to think there's an opportunity there. So even if a supervisor passes away, the trainee goes, whoa, stop. We cannot just delete everything and burn this thing down. We've got to handle our files properly. We've got to handle our client relationships properly. Let people know if there's already work in the, if there's work in the pipeline, you've got to address all that stuff. But it can be a genuine concern. If the relationship has already severed and now the trainee is coming back at a later date trying to get the info, If you are unable to obtain access to those old files for whatever reason, you're going to end up needing to create a record of these are the steps I took, and these are when I took those steps to try to get back to that information. And I was ultimately unsuccessful because of ABC reason, whatever it was. But you at least have, excuse me, you at least have some sort of a timeline that you're documenting. Here's everything I did to try to get that information back. And that it won't make everybody happy, but that's the best thing you're going to be able to do when you're dealing with, like, say, a state regulator, for example. Sometimes there's not a whole heck of a lot else you can do. We went through a sad experience in Illinois where, you know, for us, we have to turn in as trainees looking for a license upgrade. They have to submit a work log to show how many thousands of hours they did. It has to show what's the address, how many hours they put on it, and all of that. Then they get audited off of that, and they have to turn in work samples to get reviewed by the board. And there was one who was not keeping that work log updated in real time. Their supervisor passed away, and they lost credit for years worth of appraisal assignments they had been working on because the supervisor wasn't there to sign off and say, yep, I supervised those and I agree they did that. So that's a painful lesson that trainee had to go through, and it took their license upgrade a whole heap longer than it really needed to because they weren't keeping their real-time records contemporaneously. It's a huge deal.
I had an example where the supervisor and the trainee worked very well together, but they didn't put anything on file. It was all paper, and they had a fire. And they lost all of their records in the fire. They did not have a computer record. It was a long time ago. Same thing.
For any of you who have seen me before, you have heard me tell the work file story of the Great Flood. And this is when I was prosecutor. And I cannot tell you how many times we would reach out as the source of complaint and say, we need to get a copy of your report and your work file. And wouldn't you know it, that all over the state of Illinois, from the north to the south tip of the state, whether their office was in a basement or on the 8th floor of a high rise, the floodwater swept up and took away the one banker's box that had that report and work file in it. And lo and behold, they just were unable to identify and get that information in. I've also had people on the phone, again, when I was a prosecutor, go, well, I need you to send in a copy of that work file. So what did you want to see in that work file? Never mind. You've already answered my question. You don't have one. It's okay. I'm not going to tell you what to put in your work file now that I'm asking you to send it to me. Why don't you just send me what you think I need to see? This is serious stuff, and there are bad habits that get developed really early. Supervisors, again, I implore you, break out of your own bad habits. Don't let your trainees get started developing those bad habits. Get on a program that you're doing this stuff live and in color, contemporaneously, in real time, with the assignment. You're building out the work file. You're maintaining the work file as you go, because it's really hard to put it back together 4 years from now when that complaint comes in. It's, in fact, almost impossible, let alone then even having to answer for why was this date stamped yesterday when the date of value was 4.5 years ago. Things like that, questions you don't want to have to answer later.
Supervisors anything about improving how they keep their records, because maybe they're not as afraid of technology as some of us senior adults are?
It would be mind-altering to some folks out there how just incredibly more tech-savvy the newer generation that's coming online right now really is. Yeah, I mean, if we're looking at trainees, you're looking to get a supervisor and you're thinking, what's the sort of thing I can put on a resume that I'm cold dropping on people to see if somebody will pick me up? Talk about your proficiency with modern technologies. It's a real thing. The technology gap is real. I mean, again, I have a whole law firm on here. I have millions of pages of documents at my fingertips that I have the ability to do that now. We are not talking about climate controlled warehouses with row upon row of bankers boxes that you need a retinal scan to be able to get in to access. We're not doing any of that anymore. The world has gone digital, and it's mostly, not all, but mostly for the better in a professional environment. It also can lull people into a false sense of security. Technology and tools are just that. They are not in and of themselves the end game or the solution. When you're looking at technology and tools in your appraisal practice, I have a simple rule for you. If you can't tell me how it works, you're not allowed to use it. Okay. We went through a whole run about a decade ago. Well, how'd you come up with that? I did regression analysis. Okay, and how did you approach that? What did you do here? Well, I regressed the analysis. If you cannot explain to me what it does, I can't tell you how many times I'm not picking on any particular software tool or anything like that, but I'm just going to throw one out there for a second. Most people, I think, are familiar with Spark at this point. I can't tell you how many people out there that have gone, well, how did you come up with all this? Well, I put it in Spark and that's what came out. That's not the answer. If you can't tell me how it works, you don't get to use it. If you can't tell me how your document management software program works, then no, you can't rely on that to maintain your work file. You need to understand it, but you got to put in the effort. You can understand it. And if you can, it can better your practices. All right, I've only got a couple minutes left in my session, so I'm going to do this one real quick, and then I think just a little bit of time for questions, and then I'll get out of the way for whoever's coming on after is Hansel, right? Okay. Okay, so this is real. This is clipped out of yet again, a 1004 form that's actually from a real live case that I had probably 10 years ago or so now. Cost approach. This is another thing. This is a client imposed assignment condition, and we get this. This is for you supervisors and you trainees. I need you to understand something. Cost approach, okay? Site value is based on review of land sales if available, and site to total value percentage. Well, are they available? How should I know? You didn't tell me any of that. They baked this cost approach with boilerplate language in here so they can check the box and say, I did a cost approach. Why did you do the cost approach here? Well, the client wanted it. That's always the answer. Well, the client wanted it. Well, the client wanted it is not an acceptable answer. If you're going to do it, you still have to comply with USPAP and do it properly. So, comments on the cost approach. See attached sketch. My God, what does that tell me? I mean, this is nothing other than phoning it in. I put this slide here to caution all of you. And again, this is break your own bad habits and don't let your trainees start developing those bad habits. If you're going to do this stuff, do it the right way, okay? USPAP does not turn on or off. USPAP is on, and you have to live with it, all right? When in doubt, do it right and explain why it is or is not relevant for your assignment. That's my last slide. Does anyone have any other questions for me before I get out of your way? Used them all up already. Excellent. Question, yes. So that's the $1 million question. I'm a believer that the liability attaches to the signers. Yet, some folks in this room may be familiar with the case where an appraiser who did nothing other than provide significant assistance was actually dragged before the state board and initially had a license revoked before a long, lengthy battle that went to the state Supreme Court and got that case thrown out. I don't think that's right. The state Supreme Court ultimately agreed with that perspective. Signers have liability. You have to trust, believe, and verify the information that you're relying on. So if one of your trainees is just doing significant assistance, that's great. You still have to work with them through the process. You still have to believe that it is credible and reliable to utilize it, but that liability does not or should not attach to them in that environment. It attaches to the signer, because the signer is the one who verifies, show before, I agree with everything that's in here.
Get their own business one. Add it to the supervisor.
So interesting, that's a great question. And I hadn't really thought about including some content on that. It is a business decision, I think, is the best I can tell you. There's not a one size fits all answer. I think there are reasons why the appraisal firm would want to add the trainees under coverage as additional insureds under the policy. There are also reasons why they may want the trainee to take out errors and omissions insurance and have the trainee add the appraisal firm on as an additional insured. I think that's the sort of thing that I would say, talking with your insurance provider, with your insurance broker, having the conversation about that, considering all available approaches and figuring out what your office risk tolerance really is the best way to inform that decision, because I don't think it's a one size fits all.
Well, if I can just add another wrinkle, state of Colorado doesn't recognize trainees.
Yeah.
So you can't get insurance without any credentials. So you have to add that to your, as a supervisor, policy. If you can't, it's just not an option for us to have them go get their own.
You're also the only state that mandates that you must carry E&O insurance, and then you've got the bare minimum standard state plan for that purpose too. So
Yeah.
Colorado is the odd duck in that liability environment, but which is usually, I mostly say all the crappy things about Illinois. It's nice to be able to pick on somebody else. But, thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
All you have is to guess, like, well, where is your cost, where is your land value? That's in the land value file. That's in the top file. You can see all of the land valuations, like cropland, in a folder, and you would reference that one folder for every appraisal. So they're supposed to keep it in each work file for each report, correct?
No, actually, believe it or not. Now, some folks in this room, I'm not going to pick on anyone in particular, but some folks in this room look like they were around in appraising when you used to keep binders of that information around the office. And referring back to those binders, having that be a central source of the information and referring back to that is absolutely permissible. But I will say this much: your work file is incomplete if you don't have note in the work file referring out to where the location of the information is. And that's a significant thing. I'm very reluctant to tell people to rely on third-party data holding, meaning I know a lot of people are like, well, it's in the MLS if I need to get back to it. Oh, it's in the county records, I can get it. That's a terrible thing, because they don't have any obligation to you to, you're gonna wake up one morning and they will have changed the zoning website and all that old zoning code stuff is gone and you can't get back to it. I have absolutely no problem with you maintaining your own separated data pools in your office. You control the information at that point. I'm perfectly comfortable with that. I don't like relying on others on the outside, but you must note it properly or you've not actually completed your obligation in maintaining a work file. Thank you all very much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Craig, for scaring us all into submission on the liability aspect. I do appreciate genuinely you coming and spending time with us here on a Sunday. important to understand what the liability aspects and considerations are. I've personally worked with a lot of trainees. It's rewarding, it's valuable. I'll second what Craig said. It makes you better when you have to answer, why am I doing this? And what is this thing? How do I support this site value or whatever it is? So grateful to those that are willing to take on trainees. It's a rewarding experience, and becoming better educated really just makes you a better professional, whether you're starting out as a trainee, whether you've been doing it for a long time as a certified appraiser. But thank you. If you have other questions, Craig will be floating around.
Yeah, I'm around all week, so pull me aside if you've got other questions. I'm happy to take them. And again, thanks everyone for your time. It's great seeing you all, and I'm glad you're all here for this. It's important. This is important stuff, and it's good that you're putting in the effort to be here and do this.
You can tell he's clearly a shy personality, so you'll find him cowering in the corner somewhere if you want to run him down and ask any additional questions. But thank you, Craig. Thank you for being here. Next up, we have Hansel Dobbs with Aloft Appraisal, also on the board of APA in Texas. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about artificial intelligence to augment our own, obviously. But Hansel, thank you for being here. We'll let you introduce anything you want to offer by way of introduction, and then jump into it.
Yeah, I'm a second generation appraiser from North Texas, South Texas in particular. Yeah, an MNAA, underneath them, and kind of been around different roles in the profession, from review appraiser to chief appraiser, and now chief appraiser for appraisal work for a while. But today we're going to talk about ChatGPT. So this thing was born November 30th, 2022. So it's not even 2 years old yet. So my first question, I needed to get a sense of the room here, how many people have used it? Wow, just less than 2 years, that many people got it. How many of you are subscribing to it? How many of you are paying for it? Less, far less. How many of you have used it in an appraisal? You, okay, awesome. Well, so we're gonna kind of jump into this, and the first thing that I want to do is kind of give you a little bit of a tour, because we have a big event actually happening school Thursday. It's great timing. So you're going to see right here, 01 preview, 01 mini. Have any of you noticed that? Have any of you noticed the new models in here called 01 preview and 01 mini? Hear me? Okay. So if you notice this, we've got 01 preview and 01 mini. If any of you noticed this? No. Okay. I'm going to give you a little bit of background. To do it, I need a volunteer. Very simple question, but I need a person to answer a question. Anybody? Melissa, I know you know the answer to this question. How many R's are in the word strawberry?
3.
3 R's. Does anybody disagree? Anybody disagree? Let's test that against the multi-billion-dollar LLM.
Down shade.
We're about to move, everything that you thought about this school is about to change.
Well, hey,
Misspelled.
it
But there are two
corrected it.
There are 2 R's. Are you sure? It is sure. Okay. Break that down for me. Letter by letter. Still gets it wrong. And I can try to, eventually I can ask it enough questions. It'll eventually come around to word 3 and it will apologize. Okay?
As it should.
Kind of makes you think about this a little bit. Well, so they addressed this with 01 preview and 01 mini sitting right there. And it's called 01 preview and 01 mini, but behind closed doors, when they were building this out, it was actually called Project Strawberry. Because they realized that it had a blind spot. And there's other blind spots, and there's no way for us to really know just how many blind spots this thing has. Because like Craig talked about, it's something that's very hard to understand. This is it's artificial intelligence. Not even the people who built it can really completely understand how this thing was built, how it's coming up with these answers. It's a very powerful tool, but it definitely has its blind spot that they're working on. The other thing about 4.0 right there, and then the regular 4 is when it comes to international mathematics, collegiate testing for mathematics. The 4 and the 4.0 are testing around 20 percentile of the world. O1 preview is specifically built to address this blind spot, but also get a lot better mathematics, science, biology, chemistry. This model is performing at 89 percentile worldwide, much better mathematics, much smarter than 4 and 4.0. It's getting better, but it's still something that's really hard to understand. It doesn't really meet the benchmark for what we're trying to achieve for real estate appraising, which means we have to understand the data. Okay, so what I'm going to do is we're going to stick with 4. And then right over here, we have the ability to create a script, which our manager already have. We can also tie this into some other third-party tools. So I've got these 2 right here called Hot Mods and Whimsical Diagrams, which we can do some kind of cool stuff with that. And what we're going to be doing today is we're going to actually do a market. So build diagram for even path for market. Now, while it's doing that, a little bit of work for the analogy I've always kind of come up with this is I grew up around woodworking. Been woodworking for about 15 to 20 years now. As soon as I had a house with a garage, I could start building my tools up. And I've always compared this tool, in my mind, came out, to a table saw. So table saw, if you've never used one, it's a very, very powerful tool. It can cut wood a lot better than a hand saw, but it can also cut off your finger. Take your hand off, maim you in a lot of different ways, roll wood back into a very high speed. Just because it can hurt you doesn't mean it's bad. It's a very good tool. There's all kinds of cool stuff with it. But I understand how to use that tool. I know how to turn it off. I know how to do a cross cut on it, cross cut flood. I know how to go into it with a plan for safety, eye protection, ear protection, push sticks, feather boards, driving knives. I know what that thing's capable of, and I know how to put up the cut to make sure it doesn't hurt. This is incredibly powerful, but it can very much hurt you. And so when we go into using something like this, we have to go into a plan of action. We have to know where its blind spots are, what we can do and what we cannot do in real estate. So as you can see, put this whole model together for us. So we'll dive. So let's go back over here to ChatGPT. So the way I've always thought about this tool, if you're going to use it for your real estate appraisal, I've always thought about what you write in an addendum or any part of your appraisal components to it. There's the actual data, the facts that you're going to put into that write-up, and there's the actual writing. This is incredibly good at writing. And plus, let me bring it back up here. 4.0 is really good at writing. O1 preview is even better at writing. It's incredibly good. In fact, this O1 preview is performing at the same kind of capacity as a PhD in mathematics, chemistry, biology. It was really built for that. And it's doing a great job at it. It just takes a little longer for it to think. But it was built to spend more time thinking before it answers. Whereas 4.0 moves a lot faster. You'll notice that if you ever get the paper. But when I talk about how I can use this, I like to think of it as it's just going to do my writing for me. I want to isolate and say, I'm the one that can write, not you. And so when I go into this, I've never told anybody how to use this. I kind of like building a script. You're writing code for an application, and you can save these. So like right over here, let's go ahead and start. We are going. Right. And let's just go ahead and do it the way you probably should never ever. So do it wrong. Write a market analysis for zip code 7501. This would be the worst idea in the world ever. So just write that and then copy that to your appraisal. This is what's going to come up with, but we're going to make this a whole lot better. And what's cool about it, as we build out the script, here, we're going to name market analysis. We can come back to it. And once you come back to it, you can just say, I want you to do the same. And we're gonna summarize that script when we get towards the end. Look right at it. Okay, my first advice I always like to give everybody is we're gonna say, I want you to act like a residential real estate. You're gonna get a much better write-up, it's not a lot more like a real estate appraisal. The other thing to know about the way ChatGPT works is it likes delimiters. It really looks at delimiters as kind of like little anchor points of instruction. So a delimiter would be something like semicolon. It could also be a line break. So you can do a semicolon, or we could do this, two line, or we could do a one like a list. This. These are instructions. It really likes those anchor points. So, okay, I'm gonna do this, then I need to make sure I do this, then I need to make sure I do this. I kind of like just going fast and just using semicolon. Back here, semicolon. The next thing I'm going to tell you, I don't want you to use any facts or data. Only want to write.
You forgot you.
Would you say some of the things that I can't see it, not see it?
Yeah, so act like a residential real estate appraiser. I don't want you to use any facts or data from third parties. I only want you to write it. I'm going to provide the data, not you.
You forgot the you in that last sentence.
Yep. Now, I went ahead and did a little bit of research. We don't have a ton of time, we've got 13 minutes left. So in the paid version, not necessarily the free version, but you can upload data to. So I'm going to go to my downloads. This is the subject property. Name subject property. I want you to start with a brief summary. Brief summary of the features of subject property from the subject property. So that's an actual MLS sheet. All right, yeah. The other spreadsheet I've got it here. So right here is market statistics. Now, what I did was I searched my market in the metric system MLS. I don't think I can scroll it over. And I selected my market, similar properties, exported the actual statistics, median sales price, median days on market, the high, the low. Most matrix MLS systems allow you to do this. I'm not too sure about some of the other ones. But down there at the bottom, there's like a little bar icon. You can click it, choose tabular, export that. I think it's CSV or PDF. ChatGPT can do that. So we've provided that to it. I want you to use market statistics PDF. And sometimes it's really all the construction. Yeah, we need to provide it. We can always construct do better when we take another crack at it. But we're going to keep building this until we have it just the way we want. A little bit louder. Okay. So we can always add to these instructions as we build the script out. We're going to keep going until we have this exactly the way we want it. So we're going to start with that. On that document, we're going to have a third document. So this third document is median sales price data in the trend section of matrix for 75013. I want you to use the median sales price CSV. Provide the 1, 2, and 3 year mark. Median sales price string for 75013. It's going really fast. Let's just go ahead and start with that and let it do its thing. Thinking about it. Up there. We're not going to use this first version of it. But we're gonna take a look at it, see how well it did. Well, until we have this just the way we want it, we're not gonna put this into our appraisal. Even if we're going to put it in the appraisal, we have to read it, make sure you agree with every component of it.
Is it the paid version?
This is the paper. You don't have to have the paper. I'm gonna show you kind of what you could do. There's a free version, do the exact same thing. So it's under property 1433 Autobus Drive, Allen, Texas, single family home, Morningside subdivision, 4 bed, 2 bath, all the different features of the property. Market statistics. For see as of 2024, the house, the sales price 467, 211 a foot. It's got all the stuff in that statistics that I told you about. We also have median sales price in 2021 was 366, then 438. It's gone down a little bit. The zip code 427. If we wanted to do percentages, we could ask it to do percentages. We could do all that. But here's what we can do now. What you can also do is take the actual market analysis that you have, the way you've always done it, and you can say, I want you to model, I want you to take this, and I want you to look like this. I don't have one exactly right at the moment to show you. You just have to use your own. But you could say, I want you to model it the way I believe it. And it'll mimic the way you believe it. The other thing that you can do is, I don't have a version of chat. So I can't upload the document. I want you to summarize instructions, the form of a list of questions for me to answer to build this analysis. So how to do that now? So now it's a list of questions. So you could put this in a Word document and just answer these questions off of your MLS. And you can modify these questions, whatever things you want to address in that market analysis, answer those questions. And then you can provide it with a template, the way you would want to write it, your own voice, say, okay, here's my questions, here's my answers, this is the way I want it structured in my own voice. Hit enter, it's going to do the best job it can. Once you do that, you say, I don't know, I kind of want to add this, I want it to be worded like this. Kind of keep modifying those instructions until you have it just right. And then you can always come back to this and say, let's do another one. For address, and it's going to execute that same level of instructions again. Here's the questions, answer the questions and just keep doing your market analysis. Now you could build another one for neighborhood description. You could do one for final analysis, for a final reconciliation, sales comparison approach, adjustment support. The idea though is that you build the script in a way that you do it with safety in mind, making sure that you build it so that it's not just bringing in random pieces of information that you don't know where it came from. You've got to provide every piece of that information exactly. Other really cool thing that you do another one. Well, I have a little bit of time left and we can do some questions and players. You guys think about this. The other use of this is not necessarily for the appraisal, it's for just professional communication. So this is a great place to take out all your names. So we're going to say, okay, rewrite following to be professional, very kind. The client sent me a reconsideration about the 3 alternate sales. Sale 1 is on the ocean. Subject is what were they? Are they a rookie? Are you even certified? What an idiot. I know. Let's see what it says. We could have done all 3. Word, come on. Don't stop working on them. This is O1 preview. O1 preview is gonna spend a little bit more time thinking about it. It's a really powerful tool, but the negative to it, when it comes to building applications that integrate with it, is that it's very expensive. Requires a lot of tokens. It's not necessarily a cost-friendly model to use. So here it says the client's providing reconsidering value of real sales. I notice that sale one is for property, whereas the subject property is not located for good. There may be some discrepancies in the comparables used. Review these selections to ensure they accurately reflect the subject property characteristics. You can do better than that. Act as a real estate appraiser to rewrite this. So you'll find that it sounds a little bit different. It's going to act a little bit more like a real estate appraiser. You can keep pushing it, but basically you don't have to spell things correctly. In fact, when you look at something like this is 4.0, but when it comes to something like O1 preview, it actually just wants you to just get straight to the point. Don't over elaborate things. It's actually really good at thinking through what you're trying to get to. It's really, really smart. It thinks through things very deeply. I'll give you an example of that. So show you what this thing can do is what is the formula for the volume of spiral? It's thicker at the beginning, thinner. It's incredibly complex mathematics, but while it's doing this thing, it's going to take a little bit. You'll see the whole thing start to blow up on us. But this tool is incredibly powerful. It's kind of like going from a hand plane or a hand saw all the way to a table saw. So you just have to understand that something that's powerful, it can do really incredible things, but it can also hurt you if you don't know how to use it. So that's the main message I wanted to say to you. It kind of goes all the way back to the example of strawberry that thought that only has 2 R's, but in reality it has 3 R's. In fact, if you go back a couple of weeks, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, if you asked it if 5.11 was larger than 5.9, it would have told you that 5.11 is larger than 5.9. And that's in the 4.0 model. But they since fixed that with all these upgrades that they've done.
Hey, Anthony.
Yeah.
So how do you decide which model you're going to use? Does it depend on exactly what you're wanting to get out of it? Or
Yeah, for us, for appraisers, I think 4.0 is just fine. 0.1 is built for higher in mathematics. Again, we're not really using the calculator. I mean, I guess you could. It can do graphs and stuff like that. I think for the Jim Hammer, yeah, he talks about how to use it for regression. Oh, here you are. I've got your book. He talks about charts and graphs and stuff like that, which I think you can do all that stuff, and now I think it's better now. You can really go down the rabbit hole. But from my perspective, I like to have complete control over the tool, telling it what I want it to do. So I think it's just fantastic at writing and organizing things, bullet pointing things, doing sections, adding stuff to it, elaborating on things. But at the end of the day, I've got to proofread it, put it into my appraisal, make little changes to it, make sure it's exactly what I want it to be. And then makes my appraisal look a lot better, stuff like that. Also know that when you start to use this, don't be afraid to do something like start a whole new spread. And just take your entire addendum and drop it. So what you can do is you can drop your entire addendum in. Say, I want instructions. I want a brief set of instructions that I can give you to make you write the way I like. And it will tell you those instructions. Like it uses a bunch of adjectives and stuff, so you can steer it to make it sound like you a lot better versus say, you know, write a market analysis. Like, you know, this is going to be incredibly dark. The market was a beast. This is how it started. Yeah, you can steer this in a million different directions. The housing inventory was a ghost, whatever, but if I told it to act like Grisham, anybody else, start to see that style come into it. But if I say, here's how I write, it will start to sound like you. So there's a lot of different little angles. I'm already pretty much out of time. I tried to go as fast as I could, to get as much value in there as possibly could. The main point goes back to Craig Capilla about, having credibility, having believability, understanding every single component of appraisal, tying it back to the finance. Any questions? No.
Thank you, Hansel, very much, no pressure with the one who wrote the book standing in the back, looks like he's watching you. I appreciate it very much. As Melissa's coming to set up, we do have a couple of things we want to give away, for those that made the time to come and be here with us. Could I have a quick show of hands, anybody who's here as a trainee? Awesome. Okay, yes, please. Keep your hands up for just a second. So I'll tell you what we're doing. Of course, I guess you may decide to take your hands out after that, but we have 3 certificates that we're going to give away from Joanne, who has our patented question of, is that fraudulent or not? These, though photocopied, are not fraudulent. They are legitimate. Joanne has offered generously to give 2 hours of time in preparing for
State exam or consulting, extend to your supervisor. But before you get to the report, actually state somebody that you have to look at it and you've got compliance what the state board wants. It's highly suggested. So 2 hours free of that or help getting through the exam.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I will endorse that highly. I sit on our state appraisal board. I have for the last 8 years now. And the problem when people go to get certified or licensed and they're submitting their information to the state is you don't know what you don't know. And we've had, it's not often, but we've had people, trainees that will come and, well, my supervisor just did it this way. I didn't know that I was supposed to, whatever, fill in the blank, keep a work file or support my adjustments or whatever it is. Having a third party look over, what you're doing and giving recommendations in a friendly way is a lot better than sitting before a board and having them say, well, why didn't you do these things? You were supposed to know how to do. So Joanne, thank you very much for this. We're going to do a quick drawing now for these 3. And then Melissa will turn it to you. So apologies for.
And we'll have one for both supervisors and trainees. I'll contact those out.
All right. We ready to draw?
Yep.
All right. Melissa, do you want to do the honor?
Oh, really?
I'll read it, but not while staring into the light. I may be tempted to go to it. Number 221665. All right. You want it? Excellent. And I'll then run this way. Pick one and I'll read it for you. All right. 220, nice selection. 221664. Excellent.
Okay,
Last one.
getting good at.
You are. Maybe you can keep it sequential for it. Last one, 221659. All right. Again, a big thank you, Joanne. For those that won these, please take advantage of that. As Melissa concludes, we have a couple more drawings we'll do at the end of this before we break for the networking break and allow you all to stand up and stretch. So, but until then, Melissa, we'll turn it to you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm going to give a very brief introduction. I have trained 38 trainees. So I think that's all the introduction you probably really want to know. I have a little bit of experience with that. What I'm going to talk about is optimize the training and learning experience. Now, this is going to apply to supervisors as well as trainees. Let's optimize. Let's make the most out of your experience, right? Why would you want to do that? Well, let's go back to Craig's presentation. Okay, we need to write a report. We need to develop and communicate an appraisal that is meaningful, not misleading, and worthy of belief. So let's get the most out of the opportunity. It's an opportunity that you have right now to start a new profession. It's a wonderful opportunity. Do you know how many folks would like to sit in your seat? That would love someone to train them, and they can't find them. So I want you to look at what you have as a huge opportunity, okay? So let's start with commitment. I'm going to tell you something that's one of the things that I look for in my trainees. I want a high level of commitment. Why do you think that is? Okay, I'll answer it. Because I have a high level of commitment, okay? I don't like to babysit. I want someone that truly is going to commit themselves to this new pathway, this new road that they're traveling on. Timeliness, that's one of the things that really makes a difference to me. Timeliness. If you have a learning session at 8:00 a.m., strolling in at 8:00 a.m., that's not timeliness. Coming in at 7:45, coming in at 7:30, for goodness sakes. Sitting down, getting prepared, laying out your materials. You're committed to being on time. You're committed to starting to learn when the learning process begins. Being late for meetings, being late for on-site sessions. Oh, but I had a phone call. Okay, so timeliness. Also prepare for a lesson. Prepare for the day's lesson. My folks always know what we're going to next, okay? Get ready for it. If you're doing a virtual session with them, or you're doing an on-site session, be prepared. If you're going out, you know you're going on site today, dress the part. T-shirt, flip-flops, you know, nobody's going to be at the house. Doesn't even matter. You're going to be there. Dress for professionalism as well. Be prepared. When you go on a site, when you pick up a phone to contact maybe an agent or an actual client that you have to contact to gain entry into a house, be prepared. What are you going to ask them? Oh, I forgot to ask you this. Let me call you back. Oh, wait, I'm not sure about that. I don't know if that's going to fit my schedule. Let me call you back. Be prepared. Everything that you do, be prepared. Yesterday's session, maybe you had questions. Wow. Ooh, write them down. Get out your phone, put it on notes. Record it, for goodness sakes. Questions that you want to answer. Be prepared. Be ready to learn. Commit yourself to the path that you're taking. Don't look for excuses. Do you know we can find an excuse for absolutely every single thing in this world that we do not want to do? Every one of us. It doesn't matter who we are, how long we've lived. The more we've lived, the bigger our bag is of excuses that are so plausible. And I can give you an excuse that'll bring you to tears. I don't really want to do that, so I'll just pull out one of my excuses. Okay, my dogs. Oh, golly, my friends, sisters, brothers, cousins, aunt got in a fender today. You see how silly that sounds? Bags of excuses. Don't be the person that pulls out excuses. If you absolutely, positively have an issue with something and say you can't get to class on time that day, you can't make it to the office like you should, by all means, sometimes these things happen. But when you're the person that has that every time, it's an excuse. And I tell my trainees, I might even sit down and cry with you because your situation is so sad for the 87th time. But you know what I'm going to do? trainee. Look, they're all accustomed to this. What am I doing? I'm cutting you out. You see, I'm giving you an opportunity that others would love to have and would make the most of. See, so don't be the person that gives those excuses. Get yourself ready to learn. You know, that's the best thing you can do for your supervisor is to be the person that they say, oh, it's what a pleasure teaching. Wow. And you know what else they can say? Because that person listened, because that person took it in and embraced the learning. I bet they passed that national exam the first go round. Now we're all proud of you, okay? We celebrate every time something like that happens in my office. You also want to minimize distractions. Minimize distractions, okay? You really got to create an environment that is conducive to learning. All right, if we had someone, and I'm going to pick on the back table over there. All right, we're in a casino. They've got a card game going back there. Nobody's talking, right? They got a card game going back there. And you feel like you can hear the cards every now and then. You can feel the big money they're throwing in the table. That's a distraction to those that are in the room listening. It's a small distraction. It's still a distraction. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to have a quiet, private area. What I tell my folks, even when we're doing virtual learning, virtual training together, I don't care if you have to go in a closet. Go in the closet, close the door. I don't want to hear the dog bark. I don't want to see the children run by and do this, and they do, okay? Or someone, the television going in the background. You need to be in an environment that's conducive to learning. Oh, I can hear. I don't need you to hear. I need you to listen. And I need you to engage. Okay, you need to engage. But you can't do that when you're multitasking. How many of us multitask? Go ahead and admit it. Okay, yeah, you could have raised your hand higher. Did you see what I multitask? But there are times when I have to say, shut it down, Melissa. Shut it down. This is important. That's what you should do each and every day. So get in that private area. We all love to respond constantly and instantaneously to somebody eating stuffed bell peppers for lunch right now, and they wanted to give us a photo of, right? Not now. Not now. I'll check out your bell peppers later, right? Here's a powerful thing. Don't put it on silent. Shut it off. Shut it off, okay? When you are on site, now my trainees know this, when you're on site, that phone is a camera, and a camera only. It's not text messaging, answering phone. Oh, I'm just gonna see who it is. Doesn't matter who it is. Doesn't matter at that point. Okay, how long are we on site doing a site visit? Somebody give me a time. Hour and a half. Okay, if you're really incredible, 45 minutes. Okay, don't rush these things, folks. Don't rush that. You're going back to the office and writing a 30, 40, 50 page report on that one site visit. Don't rush those things. Ignore the phone. Period. Ignore the phone. One supervisor told me, she said, seems like she, her trainee, she said, seems like she really wants to learn, but she will not put that phone down. I said, wow, I wonder whose fault that is. Call me critical, but it's the supervisor's fault, folks. If you let them babysit the phone, don't complain that they're not understanding what you're doing on the site. So
let's do something about removing that phone, okay? Next, when we're doing a virtual session, close your email. Close your email. The only thing that I allow them to have open, and I mean, truly, this is a trust factor, is USPAP, me, and whatever we're talking about. That's the only thing you can have on your desk right now. I have them do a lot of research, and I do some virtual training a good bit. You know, when I say, okay, let's research this. I teach a lot of virtual CE classes. Guys, I've learned to watch your arm muscles, okay? I'm listening, and, you know, you're watching this. They're keying in the whole time, okay? It's better than the guy that was playing his guitar during a CE class. I have photos of that, by the way. He did not get CE credit. Close your email. Put the phone away from you, whether you're on site or whether you're in the office. I do the same thing for my assistant. It's okay for you to see who it is. If it can wait, it does wait. You have break time and you have lunch time. That's called your time. Everything else is called what? My time. Supervisors, it's okay to put restrictions on folks because, are you a supervisor? Why are you a supervisor? So that you can just entertain him all day? Yeah, he wants to get rid of you. What's going on with that? He wants to get rid of you. He wants to see you with that brand new license smell on you, right? Yeah. And the best way that's going to happen, follow these instructions. Golly, they're not even hard. When you are doing work, now you're finished. You're finished with your supervisor. You've had your time with the supervisor. Now you're back in the office and you're working yourself. You and that computer, you're researching, you're analyzing. Let everybody else around you know, leave me alone. Let me go. Don't come and tell me about your day. Don't ask me questions. Don't chit chat. I'm busy. Now, I always had, in my office, I had Vicki, who was my chatty assistant, okay? And I told her, I said, if you see a grid on my screen, don't even tell me when it's burning down. When the walls are burning down around me, I'll figure it out. Don't talk to me. Folks, that's the solitude that you're going to need sometimes for the concentration that has to go into this, right? You agree? I need to see some kids. Come on. All right. We agree. Right. So alert the people around you. Let it go. I need my time. I need to focus on this, right? What else do we need to do? Active learning. Oh God, what on earth is active learning? Well, let's look at it. Engage. Now here's the thing. Engage with the material that we have. Let's take, you just went on site. Supervisor and trainee together. You went on site. Let's analyze what we have. Let's talk about it. Let's summarize the house. Let's, I come up with the quality and condition rating, and then you come up with it. You tell me why you picked C3 or Q2. You tell me. I don't want to tell you all the time. I want you to tell me. Then we're going to talk about why you think it's right. Yeah. Why you're thinking they need to alter slightly. Or, really? Is that what you think? No, we never do that, right? So, have them summarize what they saw. Now, you want them to always be alert. You want your trainee to always be alert to what's there. And sometimes, let's just say I'm in a house that has repairs. And maybe we're doing an FHA or a USDA or a VA, and it's got repairs. I might kind of stand close to the repair, hoping they notice it. before I have to point it out to them, right? Well, then what does that mean? If they notice it, that means you need to have already schooled them, gave them the guidelines themselves to what? Study? While they go to a rock concert or something? No, let's go with a nice, quiet, solitude place. Okay? Let's learn it. Let's study it. So you want them to summarize. Create questions for them. Okay? You may have noticed, what has Joanne been doing all morning? What was Melinda doing all morning? Okay? I even tossed in one or two. We were creating questions. Why? Because we knew you needed to hear the answer, and we knew Craig had it, right? You do the same thing with your trainee on site. Create questions for them. Sometimes they'll say, "Oh, Melissa, this is a repair item." And I'll tell them, "No, that seems cosmetic to me. I don't know. Why do you think it would be a repair item?" And I may do the image. Quiz them. Get them to know they're right. Sometimes I tell them they're wrong when they're not. Why would I do that? I want you to convince me. Give me your argument why you're right. That's another thing. It's almost like Craig knew what I was going to talk. Craig said, sometimes the trainee's right and you're wrong, supervisor. I want them to think, well, maybe Melissa could be wrong. I want them to give me the argument why they know they're right. So, create questions for them. Quiz them. Challenge. You're not always going to be standing next to them, right? Uh-oh, real life coming at you. 90 miles an hour. Teach the concept to someone. Ooh, I have the best example for that. Folks, one of my trainees. Now, she was a PhD in education, just so eager to learn. Right? So, our session for, I think, about a week or two, we were really honing in on quality ratings and condition ratings. Well, she has a family trip once a year. That weekend was their family trip. First thing she did when they got to this big house that the whole family was sharing, she said, I walked them through and said that would be triple crown. This is a tray ceiling, or some call it a step ceiling. And she went through identifying the quality items. And she said, and then I told them, this is a Q3, C3. And she said, not one of my family understood. But she said, I taught them anyway. So she used what she knew. A lot of times I will tell them, like just the other day, we were in a virtual session. And I said, okay, everybody get up. I want you to go walk through your house right now. And I want you to come back and I want you to give me the quality and the condition rating. And I want you to use UAV language. Yeah, that means read UAV language and become familiar with it. Those are vetted words, folks. Use those in your appraisal when you're describing or you're qualifying, right? The quality and the condition. So I have them go out and look at it and then come back and teach it to us. I did one session just the other day. We had a session in the morning and then we had a session in the evening. And I said, okay, you're on, John. You're going to discuss. I let him take one concept, moved on, went on to the next one. Okay, Allison, was he right? So I'm trying to get them to apply, not just listen. Get tired of listening. You're tired of me already, aren't you? What's wrong with you? Okay. We need to do more than just listen. We need to engage. So have them teach that concept to someone. There is so much much information in just that one photo right there that you can teach on for what, probably an hour. Getting them to truly see what is there, quality, condition, what makes it a higher quality, what would make it a lower quality, how would it change? So when they take the chance to teach it to someone else, there's several instructors in the room. How do you learn best?
By teaching.
By teaching. Absolutely. And there you go. Spaced repetition. Spaced repetition. Okay, we know what repetition means. Space just means, do it over time. Don't all at once, just repeat 5,280 feet miles. Incorporate it into your discussion. Let's go have lunch. And I'm just going to casually drop how many feet are in a mile. And you're going to go, she's losing. Okay, but you see, I'm putting some space in between that. So I am really big on visuals. Really big on visuals. Now, when I gave this visual to them, this is what I said. Print it out and put it on your wall. Wall of your office. Print it out, put it on the wall of your office. Why? Well, it's your assignment element. Drives your scope of work. Gotta know these things. Why do I have arrows on 4 of them? What am I trying to do? Emphasize, right? So what they do is they pass that. It's in here. And then an hour or two later, bam, they pass it again, going back. And it's in here again. Okay, guys, surround yourself with things that will help you. What's my time? How's my time?
33 minutes.
33, thank you. Surround yourself with visuals that can help you. I even told them there was one I gave them, and I said, I want it above where you brush your teeth in the morning. Don't worry if no one else understands it. You do. I want you to read it again and again and again and again. Quiz yourself when you're entering a house. Guys, you can't help it. I walked into the casino. I don't like casinos. So I'm thinking, quality, 6. Okay? Not true, but you know what I'm saying. When you walk in a house, any residential property, any commercial, start looking at the quality items. Get it in your head, get it in your thinking to where it becomes a part of you. Bullet points of information. That's the kind of stuff that's going to go above where you brush your teeth. Okay? There was one of my former trainees, whenever we did our graduation ceremony, because we do one of those. We congratulate folks whenever they pass that exam and when they finish the training. One man walked up to me and he said, I'm so-and-so. He said, I know who you are because you go to bed with us every night. He said, I go to sleep and I'm listening to your voice. He said, my wife gets in bed with that computer and turns on one of the sessions. It's like, oh, that's so cool. Okay. I just think that's amazing that someone takes things to the point that they want to just keep putting it in front of themselves. Now, when we get ready for that national exam, you know what I tell them? I have tons of videos of information. And I tell them, see that phone you carry around with you? Put a video on it. Start it. And go about your day. It's gonna sink in, it's gonna soak in, you're gonna hear it again and again and again and again. You get in the shower, I told them I'm not gonna look, okay? Just go ahead, get it running. Keep it going. Put information in front of you so repetitiously over time, you're hearing it again and again and again. Why do you think I know the phrase, and you do too? If your friend was jumping off of a bridge, would you do it too? Because how many times did my mother say that? Right? So things stay with, I know your mother said it too. I can tell. Okay? These things stay with us because repetitiously. We've heard it. So the next thing, create charts, create visuals, create things to help you remember. We have little acronyms that we use for different things. Put the acronyms in front of you, right? And as you text, put it on the wall. Head, put it on the wall. You see, put these acronyms so you have to say, let's see, possession, interest, time, and title. You have to say them to yourself. Make yourself remember each time. You're learning, you're broadening that foundation that your supervisor is struggling so hard to get into you. Take advantage of learning time. Well, help me out here. Hey, don't wait till the last minute. Let me tell you something I heard from someone. He truly told me this. I'm not making it up, because I wish I was. He wasn't doing his work as he should have. He was not keeping up with the education component as far as his experience was going. And I several times babysat. I warned him things are not looking good. Let's get a little more interested. Let's get more engaged in what we're doing. So finally one day he said, I just don't think you know how smart I am. Like, man, from my seat, you ain't got it, buddy. You're not that smart. Well, what do you think happened to him? Do you think he has a license today? No, because he didn't even get to the point that he was eligible to sit for the licensing exam. That's how smart he was. But you see, the problem was in his mind, he said, hey, look, I've got my MBA. I'm smarter than most. I can just read a little bit of information when I take a test. This isn't a test. This is the granddaddy of all tests. Because it's a hard test. Don't fool yourself into thinking it's not. And I tell you what I tell my trainees. If you passed it, you were prepared. If you felt like it wasn't as hard as I told you it was going to be, you were what? You were prepared. It didn't become an easy test. You were prepared. Don't think at the last minute you can just sit down and take in use pack. Application of it. It's not going to happen. Modes of thinking. Concentrated efforts. Uninterrupted periods of concentration. What did I say about the phone?
Turn it off.
Turn it off. You're studying. Put the video on that you're listening to again and again and again and again. Turn off the TV. Go out in the middle of the woods. Concentrated effort gives you a deep study. Again, in your mind, create application of every bit of that information. Force yourself to engage in the material that you're studying. Okay? In a relaxed environment. Let your mind wander. Again, I go back to, there is not a property that I go into that I'm not taking in quality and condition. And even NPRs sometimes. I'm looking at it and I'm saying, no, deferred maintenance. Not going to get a VA loan, sister. Okay? Well, they're not even applying for a loan. It's my sister. I went to visit her. Okay. So do you see what happens? But I'm using what I know. What does that do? It cements it. And you see, I'm in a relaxed environment. A relaxed environment. My family's construction. Construction. Our Thanksgiving Day conversation isn't your average conversation. But we're just immersed in it. That's what you need to do. You need to be excited about it, trainee. Supervisor. You need to look at it as this is a grand opportunity to help someone enter our profession that's knowledgeable, that you won't be ashamed of, and they're gonna carry your name. You know that they're gonna carry Melissa trained, yeah. Melissa trained her. Right? You've got to do both of these, uninterrupted, and then just a relaxed learning, always learning, always learning. Multisensory, multisensory. Know your learning style, supervisor. Supervisor, this is geared more toward you right now. You're gonna learn how they learn, okay? I had one trainee that said, look, you just need to stop with this discussing use path. You need to get us out on that site. How am I gonna learn how to appraise a house if you don't take me out to a site? Supervisors. We understand the fallacy in that thinking, don't we? Are they visual? Do they learn most by just seeing new information? See, that's why we do charts. That's why we do bullet points. That's why we paste it to the wall, right? Auditory. There we go. Turn it on, listen. Even sitting in a lecture situation, even going around the house measuring and talking and pointing out this NPR, that NPR. This is quality of construction. What type of countertops do we have? Does it affect the quality of construction? How does it affect it? Kinesthetic. Are they hands-on? I gotta measure it, I gotta touch it, I gotta feel it. Well, that's what a lot of appraisers think, which makes it a little hard for them to go into a sight unseen. You know, your inspection is inspecting information, gathering data, not so much touching and feeling. Sometimes folks have to touch and feel, but we need to understand and we need to hit every one of these learning styles when we're working with these trainings. And then, of course, reading and writing. Well, my goodness, that's called standard too. All right? Whenever we're communicating, effective communicating. Effective communicating. Now, I love the GPT, the ChatGPT thing. I think that's kind of cool. But you better read it before you sign it. Okay? He just showed you the fallacies. So, supervisor, this is geared to you. Understand what their learning style is and meet them with it, pull them up from where they are. In conclusion, words everybody wants to see and hear, right? In conclusion, all right, your in conclusion is congratulations, you now have 1,000 experience hours if you're sitting for a licensed exam, or you have 1,500 experience hours, and you're armed with information and a foundation that's going to get you there. Where we had it? Brand new license smell, right? That's exactly it. So in conclusion, appraising is not for the faint of heart. Folks, I'm going to tell you something. I mean, come on, you just spent 30 minutes with me. I'm a tough supervisor. Oh, you can tell, can't you? I can tell the way you're just looking at me. You said, man, I'm glad I don't have her. It's all right. Thank you. It's all right. I told my trainees, I said, guys, you're going to come to a point in your training where you're going to say, I can't wait to lose her. And that's okay. I'm fine with that. Because I know that you're actually learning it because you've taken the time and you're not going on the family picnics and you're missing dinner and you wish you could have went to Disney World with everybody else, but you're not doggone it. You're stuck there doing your work. It's not for the faint of heart. You really have to dig down deep. Because think of it like this. You, as an appraiser, have the capability to completely destroy someone's life and financial situation. You have that in your hand, in that stroke of a pen with your signature. You can financially harm a client, whether it be a lending institution or an individual. That's serious. This is not for the faint of heart. It's also not a hobby. Well, I'm going to pick up an appraisal here and there. I had an attorney that wanted me to train him. An attorney. He came with a real let me just pick up that field. You know, it's just something to add, another license, make me look good. I said, you're not a best candidate. Well, you know, I can do this and I can do this and I can do this. And I said, you're not a best candidate. I need someone that has the time and willing to put in the time. Okay, how am I on time? Okay, all right. So back to my attorney. He insisted, I can do, I'll make you so proud of me. I can do this. I will keep up. Just sentence for sentence. I'm on it. I've got it. I know what I'm doing. What do y'all think happened?
He didn't make it.
Of course he didn't make it. 1 month in. Oh no. 1 month in. He came to my office. And I could tell when he walked into my office, I said, come on in. I said, let's chat. You were right, Melissa. I thought, I'm always right, right? No, not really. I said, can't do it, can you? He said, no. I said, I told you that. I said, I knew what was ahead of you. You didn't. He said, and I want you to hold on with this. He said, appraising is 10,000 feet deep. And some days it's 20,000 feet. Folks, it's not a hobby. It's not a pickup. It's not, well, I'll do one appraisal a week and, you know, I'll kind of keep my hand in the market a little bit. You either know the market or you don't. You don't keep your hand in it, right? You keep your whole body immersed in it. Your whole mind immersed in the market. So it's not a hobby. So trainee, if you're thinking this is just a little side hustle you're going to do, a little moonlighting maybe, or, you know, when I'm bored, get out now, do us all a favor, right? Supervisor, find someone else that's willing to commit, willing to go the extra mile. So it's not moonlighting either, and it's just not a pickup side hustle. It's a new career. Every appraiser in this room, did you have to walk here?
Yep.
You did? Okay. What I meant was you have no automobile. You have no roof over your head. You haven't put any kids through college. You said, that's, none of those statements are true. Appraising has been a very good living for you, has it not? If it hasn't, you weren't crying enough, right? Okay? Not one of us has gone without missing very many weeks. It's a career. It's not a job. View it that way. It's not a job. It's a career. It's for the long haul. And that's the way you learn training, is for the long haul. This is some of my folks. Some of my folks, you'll notice we're in a mirror, taking a picture of ourselves. I want you to look at that for a minute and somebody tell me why we're doing that. There's a reason.
Proof that you're personally inspecting the property.
You better believe it. You better believe it. Let me tell you how and why I learned that trick. I go to a lot of adjudicatory hearings for different licensing boards. That's when an appraiser has been turned in and they are investigating their report, their work file. And I was at one hearing when the the defendant, the appraiser, was being accused of never having gone on the site. That person was never at my site. And the appraiser said, yes, I was. I was at, look, here's the photos I took. Anyone could have taken those. The appraiser accidentally had a photo of part of his body when he was trying to do a picture in a bathroom. And he could produce that, and it helped to solidify the crumbling of the case against him, okay? So I teach my trainees to take a photo of themselves in the mirror. Make sure you have some house in the background that can prove I was in your house. Little tips like this, guys, little things like this. We learn, but we have to be willing to learn. We have to take in everything that if you're doing anything this through this entire conference, there's not a person that's going to stand up and speak, or a person you're going to meet in the hallways that can't teach you something. Take it in. That's embracing what we have. Making the most of it. Let it become yours. Okay? Any questions? Anybody have any questions? I have bored you immensely. Okay?
What's the quickest you cut somebody out of your program?
What do you think? I think it was the attorney. I think the attorney was the quickest. I cut someone out at six weeks. And my program's non-refundable. That's something I tell them. You know, you took someone else's spot. Guess how much money you just lost? Yes, ma'am.
Not really a question, more so a comment, that Stephanie and her dad Bill were both my supervisors. And I like they always said to any training that comes in was, you're responsible for your learning and education here. Like, I'll do my part and I'll do as much as I can, but I don't know what you don't know or what you're not understanding. So as a trainee, if something's not getting through, you need to address that.
You need to speak up.
No one knows what you don't know.
Yeah, and you're so right. You folks, there's some responsibility as a trainee that you take. You know, hey, I didn't get that. And don't say, well, I didn't want to bother them. They want to be bothered or they wouldn't be your supervisor. That's a big bother taking on someone. They bought into that.
The worst thing you can do is say that you understand and you don't.
And you don't.
Mhm.
And it comes out later. And then sometimes later it's too late. It's way too late. Okay? So very good point. You are responsible. You know, I tell folks, I am capable of educating and teaching the material. But who sits and takes that national licensing exam? They do. So who makes things effective? Truly. They do. They do. Okay? So that's on you, trainee. That's on you. Grab information and learn. I tell mine all the time, if you're the supervisor that I am, I tell them, if you're only learning from me, that's not enough. That is not enough. Here's something you might want to consider. How's my time?
10 minutes. Yep.
I'm good?
Yep.
I'm good? Okay. Here's something you might want to consider. I will purposely have them shadow another appraiser. I'll call several friends. I'll say, hey, can I send someone out to shadow you today? You going on the site? Yep. And they go out and I tell them, observe what they do. When they do something different from what I do, watch. You can possibly come back and teach me something. You may have 2 different methods now for doing something. Take in the information. Take it in. I also let them come to my CE classes. But I have them sit in the very back when they come. And I tell them, don't answer the questions I ask. Why do you think I would say that? I don't want them to answer the questions I'm gonna ask through the day. Because I don't want them to look like a smart aleck. Because you see, I know some of the seasoned appraisers are struggling with an answer that my folks in the back can say, got it, I'm on that. That's AO 21. And they'll talk about it. Now, I had a licensing board member that was in my class one day. And when we got to the total use pack questions, I told my folks, I said, it's okay for you to speak on these. Well, they were just left in answer. So the licensing board member came up to me after class and he said, did you see who was answering all those? I said, yeah, I noticed that. I noticed that. They were actively learning. They were actively listening. Remember, we don't just need to hear it. We need to be engaged. Okay, any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
So if you take someone to shadow you, do you notify the client?
Well, when my assistant comes with me to hold the dummy into the tape, so to speak, I don't notify the client that there's going to be two of us. Because you see, that person's not adding significant appraisal system. They are observing. They're not going to touch your report. They're not even going to go back and research anything. They're shadowing. What does a shadow do? They're seen and not heard, right? They're just silently behind you. So no, it's not significant presence. Good question. Yes, ma'am.
I do have one client that they gave a letter.
Okay, and engagement letters and contract, isn't it? It's binding. You accepted it, it's binding. So in that case, there's your answer, isn't it? Anyone else? Okay, well, guys, you have been wonderfully silent. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Melissa. All right, that was wonderful.
Thank you.
And for those of you coming in the supervisor session, we're gonna have a round table with her included, so.
You'll have an opportunity to interrogate her in a little bit more enclosed setting, but yes, thank you, Melissa, for sure. As we wrap things up here in this combined session,